You can shoot this thing manually like this, but it's super awkward. I'd rather mount it onto a tripod. But it's possible. It's just, this is an awkward and heavy piece, man. You should mount this on a tripod or table. Do you see how fast those bolts do? Damn, that is powerful. This is a Korean repeating crossbow from the Imjin War, used specifically for the Navy. During the Imjin War, this is a time where the Japanese were fighting the Koreans and the Ming Chinese were allies with the Koreans. During this time, the Japanese was trying to take over the Korean peninsula. And it was also the time period where you might have heard of Admiral Yi, who was significantly outnumbered by the Japanese, but they were able to defeat the Japanese with their superior tactics and naval supremacy. Well, one of the weapons used by Admiral Yi was a giant repeating crossbow. I wouldn't say this is the main reason why they won the war. In fact, today we're going to check out the effectiveness. Well folks, last time we shot it was pouring rain, so I decided not to shoot, so we'll redo this, not pouring rain. This thing is huge, and on top of that I have a ramrod to make sure the bolts get properly inside. So this whole thing is just, it's a siege artillery device. You need a tripod or a swivel mounted thing to shoot this, but in the context of naval warfare, there's no issues with that. They had larger artillery pieces in naval warfare anyways. This would have been used for anti-personnel, ideally against soldiers without shields. I wouldn't want to use this to aim at the lamellar plates, but against, and especially in the Imjin artwork, you see those broadheads are really large. So I think it's intentionally designed for places that are not armored, which a samurai has quite a few places. And especially if you just a ship deckhand, you probably didn't have much armor at all. So against enemies without shields, I think this is still pretty useful. That being said, in the Imjin War, you're already at the time where arquebus firearms are being widespread. Even the Koreans started using them to further extend the European designs. And so this is starting to become obsolete, but it's one of the last uses of large repeating crossbows in history, to be honest. They didn't have rubber bands back then. They didn't have internal springs back then. So a lot of this mechanism is quite difficult to make, to be honest, with the technology of the time. And I don't think they can mass produce these things. So as an artillery piece, I think it's fine. But the context of using this, you know, during the time of the ship battles, you probably heard of Admiral Yi, who was a famous Korean general and Navy admiral that was able to they were significantly outnumbered by the Japanese, but they were still able to defeat the Japanese with tactics. Yes, this was used during that time, but I don't think this was the main reason why they won. I think it's more due to tactics, of course, with you know, I'm sure you read about it. If you haven't, strongly recommend looking up Admiral Yi, or just look up Korean Navy Admiral, and you'll find this guy, and he's very interesting stuff to read. He was able to manipulate the weather and defeat forces that significantly outnumber him. So it's very fascinating stuff that I recommend to read. This is really a small snippet of Korean history, to be honest. Now the Chinese also used large artillery crossbows, but again, it was kind of a niche thing. There's mentions during the Han Dynasty of a repeating crossbow powered with wheels, so it must have been pretty powerful, but even then, it was used against militia. Peasant militias, you know, usually didn't have a lot of armor. So even for peasant militia, they had a large repeating device and not the portable ones, the small ones. I think the portable small ones are used more as a PDW, like a personal defense weapon, for a nobleman or for women or for children, like what they wrote in the Ming text. These are meant for someone without military training or women to be used for self-defense. But the larger ones can be used for military, but again, I don't expect this thing to penetrate armor. Now, you could make this much, much larger and have multiple men shooting it, but you know, it would be very complicated to make, and I don't think it would have changed warfare back in the day, because it would be huge, so it wouldn't be a very portable weapon. This thing is made This thing is made by Sagittarius Archery from Etsy. He's a Slovenian crossbow maker. He makes excellent crossbows. Thank you so much for making this. The problem is, because you're in Slovenia and I'm in Canada, we had to coordinate some of the dimensions, and one of the things I wish he did was to make sure that this brace height fits perfectly here, but there is a gap, as you can see. But you got to make do with what you have now. So every time I shoot it, I have to manually cock it onto that groove because of the brace height difference. But that's okay. It's a slight rate of fire difference for an artillery piece. I think that's fine. Okay. Okay. Oh, it's so awkward. Yeah. The size make this thing super awkward to shoot, man. But it works, as you can see. Oh, yeah. It's working, eh? But, oh, that broke the bolt. That is powerful. Well, let's check the damage. Well, one of these bolts actually exploded. Man, this will kill. But I'm not sure if it will penetrate shields, but the samurai did not have shields. This might even penetrate some armor, but I don't think Lamella armor would get penetrated. But if you don't have any armor, that will kill. Well, here's the ramrod, making sure the bolts are tightly fit. So this thing, for an artillery piece, is pretty fast shooting, but for a repeating crossbow in that category, it's a very slow repeating crossbow, but it functions. I'm sure back in the day they would make it much faster than I do. One of the things is the brace height. You have to coordinate and design the brace height perfectly so it matches the trigger position. That can improve the fire rate, but this one, it's not tuned so that it fits perfectly onto the brace height, so I have to manually cock it onto the trigger piece. That's just unfortunate because this thing was made in Slovenia and he wasn't sure what the exact brace height is, so getting this exactly the same position, that's fine, I get it. But back in the day, I'm sure they would have made it much more tuned so it has a faster rate of fire. In terms of the size, I think this is a little bit too big for a repeating crossbow. I would have made it a little bit for a repeating crossbow, I would have made it a little bit more portable. I think the Korean ones were just a little bit smaller than this because when it gets this large, it's kind of impractical. Ready? Mm-hmm. Whoa, that shot far. Did you see how far it went? Mm-hmm. Oh. That one broke. Man, this is a piece of artillery. Ugh. Ugh. Last one. Oh. Well, it's hard to aim with this thing, but you can see it does shoot, and the bolts do fly pretty fast and pretty far, so it's quite a lethal crossbow. But the bolts, because they're not fletched, it's not as effective as I wish it would have been. Here's one of them that two of them that landed on the tires. For such a far, so at this distance it's still lethal because it's penetrating the tires. So if you're a samurai, you need to make sure you're wearing lamellar armor that's made of steel plates, because leather, even leather, penetrates 2 inches. And if it's against skin, that will penetrate deep. So tipped with poison, this could be really terrifying. And the effective range of this is much higher than a conventional repeating crossbow with only like a 5-inch power stroke. This thing has a lot more power stroke, so it's quite lethal. As you can see, it devastated some of my arrows, and man, I do not want to get hit by this, and it's a repeating weapon. That being said, you saw how finicky it was to operate that machine. I'm sure craftsmen back then would have made it with a much smoother action, but it's still quite difficult to make this thing. So I can see why throughout history it wasn't something that was widely adopted and more of a niche weapon. A skilled archer would outshoot this thing, and So if you're lacking manpower, which the Koreans did during the Imjin War, you can give, you know, a peasant with almost no experience in military and operate this machine, and it would be better than him trying to use a bow of 80 pounds because he wouldn't have any archery experience. With this, he would be able to shoot roughly the same rate of fire with less accuracy, which doesn't matter too much when it comes to ship warfare, but yeah, quite devastating. Korean repeating crossbow, and we made a few modifications, and I hope now it shoots well. The main modification we made is making a more reliable trigger mechanism down here. Instead of the pin, now it just uses the levers itself. And another thing is we replaced the wood teeth with the metal teeth. It's more reliable, and it prevents the magazine from skipping up. So we're ready to shoot. You ready? Oh, that thing cocked. Oh, you feel that?
It's fast.
Powerful, and these are metal bolts, so they're very heavy. Oh, it's quite reliable now. That's good. Oh. Yeah, that's a heavy repeating. It's so long that it. No bolts, so it doesn't shoot straight, eh?
You need a shorter handle on it.
Oh. Man, that's awesome. Your turn. There you go, now it's recording. Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Wow, with the wood ones, it's so much more powerful. Check the speed. Come back here, check the speed.
Yeah, you won't see it on camera.
Do you see how fast those bolts do? Damn, that is powerful. Do you see that? This is a really powerful machine, but the problem is the handle is so long, I can't reach the handle all the way.
Yeah, I would shorten it.
I would probably shorten it. There's obviously ergonomics I can make to make this more comfortable for me to use,
yeah.
But the functionality, it works.
Yeah.
But it's a very powerful one. It's 100 pounds, 100-pound bow, and with the full draw length mounted on, this is a military weapon. But yes, I have to fiddle with the ergonomics, make the stock shorter and make the handle shorter so it fits my arm better. Then it would be a much better repeater. But thanks a lot for checking this out. It's Jack signing off. We're done. You want to shoot one?